we are live.
Gary is entering now, Mark.
Great. I call to order this meeting, the April 27, 2021 meeting of the MATC District Board. May I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Director Case?
Here.
Director Foley?
Here.
Director Hamilton?
Here.
Director Mendieta Ramos?
Here.
Director Mays?
Here.
Director Olson?
Here.
Director Phelps Socorro?
Present.
Director Wilson?
All right, we have a quorum. Are we in compliance with the open meetings law?
Yes, we are in compliance with the open meetings law.
Do we have any requests from the public to make comments?
I have not received any requests from the public.
All right, then our first agenda item is approval of the minutes from the regular board meeting of March 23, 2021. I call for a motion and a second, and please, when you make a motion or a second, identify yourself so we can record that information. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Director Hamilton moved to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion about the minutes? There being none, we have a motion from Director Hamilton and a second from Director Olson. Would all those in favor of approving the minutes from the March 23, 2021 board meeting indicate that by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Motion is approved. Next is approval of consent agenda items. As we have been doing recently, I will ask for a motion to and a second to approve all of them, and then we'll go through each one and see if there are questions or comments. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Motion to approve, Director Mays.
I'll second, Director Case.
Thank you, Director Mays and Director Case. Is there any discussion about the March 2021 bills on the consent agenda item? Any discussion of the financial report, March 2020? Any discussion about the procurement report? Any discussion about the human resources report from the board? Is L Bonds on here?
Yes, Chair Foley, I'm on the call.
Thanks. We had a brief discussion before the meeting tonight about the data that's in the human resources report and what we might do to make that more useful in the future. Could you provide us some context and comment on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I just want to briefly mention that the Human Resources team is currently working with institutional research on the development of HR metrics and monitoring so that we have a report for you that has true meaning of what we're doing well and what we need to work on. So the reports that you're receiving right now were requested by the board in the past, but they don't really give a clear picture of where we are and the overall health of the institution. So the plan is to have data related to hiring, employee retention, internal promotions, compensation changes, transfers, terminations, exit interviews, training offerings, and the like, but an overall comprehensive report with a breakdown by race, age, and gender that really paints the picture of our institutional health over time. So a quick example, when tracking turnover, we know that the industry average for turnover is in higher education is around 12%. So if we're at 8%, then we would think, okay, we're doing okay. But what we want to do is take an even deeper dive than that. We're actually going to look at where our turnover is occurring the most. So we plan to track turnover by division. This, along with the tracking of the exit interview data, will help us be able to partner more strategically with the division lead to address any issues that might be triggering turnover in that area. So that's just one quick example of how we're going to be diving deeper into the data with a more comprehensive look at where we are. So we are attempting to do at least a 2-year look back so that we can establish trends that'll help us with the development of improvement strategies and other innovations to move us toward our goal of being an employer of choice. Full transparency, we do not have the best data management systems that allows us to easily track some of the information that we're seeking. So our team is gonna, when we take that deep dive, we're gonna have to look at the system, but also it means pulling personnel files in order to obtain some of that necessary information. So a lot of this will be a manual process, but the goal is to have more meaningful reports and data, hopefully by June, but at the very latest by July. We do have a current full list of metrics that we're going to start to collect. I'm happy to send that list to the board for review. So if you review the list and there are other data points that you'd like for us to begin collecting, please let me know. We can add that to the list as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has them.
Let me first say, please do, I guess it would be best to go through Beth, have Beth distribute that list of metrics that you're planning on to the board so we
Absolutely.
can, in fact, see if there's anything we think needs to be added or perhaps clarified.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Are there any questions specifically about the human resources report or the information we've just learned from Ms. Bonds?
Yes, I have a question. Will that report contain when we transferred over through guided pathways? Because there was a lot of job shifts, so that information about, who was still employed, who left, what happened to the people that we had versus what we do have now.
Thank you for that question. If we are able to do that 2-year look back, that information should be comprised in those reports.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You should also be sure, please. I'm not sure exactly how the timing works with the 2-year look back, but we also changed the compensation system in that same time period. And so we need to kind of tease out what departures may have been as a result of unhappiness with the changes in the compensation system, if any. As well as the changes that were wrought by the guided pathways adoption. It may be an important factor and might minimize other factors. Any other questions or comments about the HR report? There being none, we have a motion from Director Hamilton and a second from Director Olson to approve the consent agenda items. Would all those in favor indicate that by saying aye?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous. Motion is approved. Next is board action items. Resolution F0175-04-21, authorizing the sale of $1.5 million of general obligation promissory notes, series 2020-2021K of Milwaukee Area Technical College District, Wisconsin. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
Director Phelps Okoro, move for approval.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Meehan, will you tell us about the sale?
I will. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the sale results. We had a great sale today. It turned out 5 strong bidders, some familiar names. I would point out Huntington, who was the winner last month bid. They were at the 3rd place. And Fidelity, who was a winner last month, is in 2nd place. And BNY has shown up, StoneX, FHN. So all of these different bidders have been part of the earlier transactions. What struck me, though, is that, and I don't know whether it's because Jeff went on vacation or whatever, but interest rates are 20 basis points lower than they were last month. So let them go on vacation again. The winner last month, the winner last month came in at a 0.57. So that's a big drop in the tax exempt rates. We aren't issuing taxable bonds. We did do that taxable refunding earlier this year. And I would say that that holds true, that worked out really well with that taxable issue, because taxable rates have gone the other way. So taxable rates have gone up, but we're not into that market. We're into the tax exempt market, and the rates continue to be extremely low. So good news for the district. And I always like to see this number of bidders. Next page, please. The issue itself, Series K, is once again 1.5 million. The settlement date is May 12th. So May 12th is when the interest clock begins. The principal payments are June 1, 22 through 25, just like your normal payments. The first interest payment is December 1 of 2021, and you will have cash available for that payment. Once again, all your debt is paid on a calendar year basis, but there are funds on hand for the December 1, 2021 payment. The notes are non-callable because of their nature, their term so short. The AA1 rating is confirmed, which is great news. And as I said, the true interest cost is at an extremely low 0.37%. I can't even say it. And Huntington Bank's the winner. Next page, please. This is a series of the normal borrowings that MATC undertakes. You'll see that on the top, we have each of the issues. You scroll a little bit more to the right, you'll see how the average rates have been bouncing around 188, 2%, 211. Well, this one came in at 191. So the rates are a little bit lower than we've seen over the past couple months. We use an average for running the math of 4%. It's just to run the math. And obviously they come in lower. We have one more sale yet this fiscal year, Series L. That's something the board will be considering at the May 25th board meeting. As far as the overall debt structure, with your existing debt, with these issues and the future debt payments that we plug in, just so we're not working in a vacuum, we're well within the levy structure that we've been working off of. So going forward, we're continuing to have a level debt service approach. At the very back of the report, we have the Moody's credit report. There is no change in language. So you can read it in your leisure, but I would say the rating outlook, factors that could lead to an upgrade, factors that could lead to a downgrade, all that language, which is really on page 5 of the report, is the exact same language as it was last month. So there's no change in any of the rating language. We're just coming into the market at a time where there's a lack of product. There's a lack of tax-exempt supply, which drives these aggressive rates. Hopefully it'll continue into next month. I'll be happy, Mr. Chair, to answer any questions the board may have at this point.
Any questions from the board? There being none, we have a motion from Director Phelps-Curro and a second from Director Case. Would all those in favor of approving Resolution F0175-04-21 indicate that? Oh, I'm sorry, after your roll call. Let's call the roll.
Director Hamilton,
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos,
Aye.
Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Olson,
Aye.
Director Phelps-Socorro,
Aye.
Director Wilson, Director Case,
Aye.
and Director Foley.
Aye, resolution passes.
Thank you very much.
Next is resolution, thank you, John. Next is resolution 0176-04-21, authorizing the issuance of $1.5 million general obligation promissory notes, series 2020-2021L of Milwaukee Area Technical College District, Wisconsin. Is there a motion and a second?
Director Phelps-Socorro, move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Hamilton. Director Phelps-Socorro. Let's see. John, is there anything different about this particular offering?
No, there isn't. I would just add that this is the last of the series of fiscal year 2021 financings, and so we continue to be on track.
Any questions or discussion about this resolution? There being none, we have a motion by Director Phelps-Socorro and a second by Director Hamilton. Would you please call the roll?
Director Mendieta Ramos,
Aye.
Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Olson,
Aye.
Director Phelps-Socorro,
Aye.
Director Wilson, Director Case,
Aye.
Director Hamilton,
Aye.
And Director Foley.
Aye. Resolution passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Meehan.
Good night.
Next, action item is approval of other student fees, avocational fees, and adult tuition. Is there a motion to approve in a second? Could I have a motion, please?
Director
To
Case,
approve.
so moved.
Was that Directors Satalia Mendieta and
Yes.
Director Case?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Eva Keither, I think you're going to tell us about this.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the fee summary that you've all received shows actual student tuition and fees over the past 2 years. And in the column second furthest from the right, we're showing the proposed fees for our upcoming fiscal 22 budget. So I just wanted to point out that all of the fees that have been highlighted in gray are fees that are set by the WTCS board. I thought it would be good to point out that there are 2 WTCS fee changes that will have some impact to our budget. The first one is our up at the top of the summary. Our post-secondary tuition rate will increase by 1.5% for fiscal 22. And the second one is further down, like in the middle of the document, the online hybrid course fee. That per credit online course fee has been suspended for FY22 by the WTCS board, so that will have some impact on our budget. The unhighlighted fees are set by MATC administration. You can see if you glanced at this document that the vast majority of the fees are unchanged. But these fees that are set by MATC administration are set with consultation from our student services group and our student life staff and administration. So of these fees, there's 2 fees that I'll point out in which MATC administration has proposed changes for the upcoming fiscal year, both related to the pandemic environment that we're in. So the first fee that has changed is our graduation fee. That will be eliminated for fiscal 22, given that our ceremonies have been virtual. The second fee that I wanted to mention is the student parking fee, which has been reduced by 50%, again, due to the pandemic environment that we're in. As I said, most of the other fees have remained unchanged. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? There being none, we have a motion by Director Mendieta Ramos and a second by Director Case. Would all those in favor of approval of the student fees, avocational fees, and adult tuition indicate that by saying aye?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Next is Resolution F0177-04-21 to approve associate degree program titled Paramedic Technician. Is there a motion and a second to approve?
Move for
Motion to
approval.
approve.
I hear Director Hamilton's motion. Is there a second?
Second, Director Phelps-Okoro.
Thank you, Director Phelps-Okoro. Dr. Dakwar, I think you're going to present this to us. Is that right?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Foley, and good afternoon, everyone. So MATC is in the process of creating a new program, as Chair mentioned, the Paramedic Technician Associate of Applied Science. So our team will present the concept review tonight. And just in terms of the process, just to remind the board, the concept review is the first of 2 phases in the WTCS new program process. And then upon review and approval by the MATC board, these program concepts will be forwarded on to the WTCS board for their review. Tonight we have the Paramedic Department Chair and Program Director, Alisa Cahoon, and she will give a brief overview of the proposed program and go over some current and projected needs as well. Also with us, we have Dean and Director of the Community and Human Services Pathways, and they are available to address any questions the board may have. So Alyssa.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Dakwar, Chair Foley. I'm excited to present the Paramedic Technician Associate's degree proposal for you tonight. The development for this program is derived from continual and increasing requests from students, current students, graduates, and some of our biggest employers within the district. Approximately 50% of our current students have demonstrated a desire to have a higher degree. Currently, our paramedic technician program is 41 credits and as part of a technical diploma. If our students are not providing EMS care through a fire department and they are taking a fire protection associate's degree, they do not really have an option at present to obtain anything higher than the technical diploma. That forces them to go to other districts or other programs. 12 of the 16 technical colleges in WTCS are already offering this program. It is a state-aligned curriculum, and we are fully accredited through CAHAP under the Committee on Accreditation for EMS Programs. Since our program began in 2015, we have increased enrollments by 600%. We currently are the largest technical college in the state to be providing paramedic education, and we're in the top 2% nationally of accredited programs. As I mentioned before, the 41 credits that are comprised the technical diploma are embedded in the 60 credits for the associate degree. We have a situation currently where enrollment opened just last week, and our cohort for fall, we have a single cohort coming in. All of the seats are filled and we are already at capacity. If we had an associate degree in place, those students who are now potentially looking at a spring start, they could start taking the general education credits in advance, take the paramedic core courses, and then resume the associate degree after. And this degree also can serve as a gateway into other allied health professions, such as emergency department technicians, nursing, respiratory therapy, physician's assistants, public health, and other similar protective service roles like emergency dispatchers. Does anybody have any questions?
Are we doing anything to expand our capacity, given that the current capacity is completely registered, if you will?
At this time, our resources for faculty clinical field sites are somewhat preventative due to the situation with COVID. We hope to be able to increase as soon as vaccinations and things of that nature are making it a more safe option to do that.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, we have a motion by Director Hamilton and a second by Director Phelps-Cora to approve the resolution to approve the associate degree program titled Paramedic Technician. Would all those in favor please indicate that by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Resolution passes. Next is Resolution F0178-04-21 to approve the partial fiscal year 2021-2022 renovation and remodeling capital projects budget. Is there a motion and a second?
Director Olson, motion.
Second, Director Case.
Thank you, Directors Olson and Case. Vice President Falkenberg, could you please tell us about this?
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Chair Foley. So this is, we've been doing this the last few years where we've taken a project or two that we want to get a head start on for the next fiscal year. And this is one of those projects to do planning and look at the specifications and all of the pre-work that goes into a capital construction and remodeling project here at the college. And the one that we're picking to this particular year is having to do in our students building, our S building on our downtown campus. We, a couple of years ago, we went through a full S building master planning process, and we're looking to now finish up the first floor of our S building. We've done a lot of work on that first floor. In case you haven't been on campus in a while, you would not recognize it. So this is finishing up some of that work on the other side of the first floor, and then the next phase will be the atrium. So this just gives us the ability to move this particular project forward before we approve it on the full budget in June, so that we can start some of that planning. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none, we have a motion from Director Olson and a second from Director Case. With all those in favor of this resolution, please indicate that by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? If you're opposed, please make sure your microphone is on so I can hear you. All right, the motion passes. Thank you very much, Vice President Falkenberg. Next is a policy review. This is a first read of the policy. It will be brought to the May board meeting for approval. It is policy D0900, course withdrawals and appeals. And I believe Vice President Falkenberg, I'm sorry, it's Sarah Adams and Chris Takeda who will be presenting this.
Thank you, Chair Foley. Good afternoon, members of the board. Chair Foley, would you like the presentation first?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. This evening, Dr. Sarah Adams and I are pleased to present a first read of a new policy regarding course withdrawals and appeals. This policy addresses how students are withdrawn from courses at the college. We're happy to have Dr. Nadine Gonzalez de Jesus and her role as Executive Vice President as a strong champion for this work and for prioritizing the implementation of this new withdrawal policy and the supporting processes. This policy was developed as part of a cross-functional team in order to operationalize recommendations made by a guided pathways design team, and really with an effort and a student-focused lens to empower students in their educational decision-making. Our team, this was a difficult process. We were persistent and collaborative, and we're really proud to present to you tonight what we've developed. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Adams.
Dr. Adams, can't hear you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a little bit of background regarding the policy. The current state of the policy, students have the opportunity to either withdraw for the course themselves or they can be withdrawn by faculty. If students withdraw from a course themselves, or rather faculty withdraw them, there can be different financial and academic consequences to the student. And as Christian said previously, a guided pathway design team recommended revising the current policy and the procedures so that we would be able to designate an appropriate college department to withdraw students from the courses, to identify the reason for the withdrawal, to provide resources to support students prior to the withdrawal, and to clearly communicate the processes and the implications of the withdrawal. And with regard to the instructor-initiated withdrawals, when the guided pathway design team looked at it, we found that there were some differences of how this was applied. So we wanted to make sure that this would become a fair policy for our students. Next slide, please. So the goal for the policy creation and the procedure that we looked at, based on the recommendations, Dr. Gonzalez de Jesus, upon her arrival, she immediately tasked us with looking at the recommendations from the committee and coming up with a withdrawal policy. And this would be a policy where the students' rights and responsibilities would be upheld and the systems will be put in place to improve student-instructor relationships with the focus on the health and safety for all of those involved. The proposed policy was created through a student-focused lens and geared towards a new student experience and empowering students. When we looked at it, there were several things that we wanted to prioritize when we were setting up the withdrawal policy. We wanted to prioritize, number one, the academic success and completion of our students. We wanted to look at the academic engagement and their attendance. We wanted to make sure that we were communicating the process for withdrawing, that so the student would have the best option possible for them. We wanted to make sure that we were able to support our faculty and our staff where student behavior may be problematic or could pose a problem to health and safety concerns. So we wanted to look at all of this information. We wanted to make sure that we had information that we were giving to students about what the referral process would be. We wanted to make sure students would understand how this could possibly affect their academic standing as well as their financial aid standing. We wanted to make sure that students had a really good idea, is withdrawal the best thing for them, or could something else be put in place to actually help them be successful? Christian?
Next slide, please. So with that, I want to give you a couple of highlights about the new policy and how we changed the existing procedures, which were contained in the administrative regulations and procedures. The first thing we did was we removed the instructor or the faculty-initiated withdrawal procedure. Secondly, we revised the procedure for student-initiated withdrawals, and as Dr. Adams said, with a lens of clearly communicating to students what happens if they withdraw from a class. So what is the impact on financial aid? What is the impact on their financial standing? Do they get a refund? Can they take classes in the future? Third, we created a process, or I should say expanded an existing process for extenuating circumstances withdrawals, where if a student has a special circumstance, so a medical emergency, a personal emergency, they can apply for this extenuating circumstance withdrawal and they can get 100% refund if it's approved. We thirdly created an administrative withdrawal process, and this is somewhat to replace the instructor-initiated withdrawal process. So administrative withdrawals will occur for non-attendance only during the first 2 weeks of any course, and it will be managed through enrollment services. So this takes the onus off of the faculty and creates a universal reason for withdrawal from a class. This will also require mandatory attendance taking by faculty. So we have created some processes, and Dr. Adams' area, Enrollment Services, is working through those procedures as we speak. And finally, we've created an appeal process by which students can request a reinstatement if they are withdrawn through the administrative appeal process. So those are the highlights of the new policy. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Adams for next steps.
Okay. So we're looking at being able to implement the policy for this fall. And as we continue to work on the policy, there are several things that we really are working on to make sure that we get right for our students. Number one is communication to students. We really want to have that communication to students about what the withdrawal policy is, how they can withdraw, but also letting them know what the other services, the academic services and things that are in place where they may not have to withdraw. We want to be able to train our faculty and staff on all the resources that would be available to them for any interventions that may need to happen in relationship to students attending or not attending the classes. That may be things like our counseling services, our counseling and psychological services, our behavior intervention team, our code of conduct referrals. So we have an ombuds person. We want to make sure that students are aware of all of these services, and our faculty and our staff are aware of these services. We also want to make sure that we have an ongoing process that's in alignment so that we can have successful implementation in the fall, with all stakeholders being prepared and comfortable with the new policy. So with that, we mean we will be rolling out training to make sure that everyone is aware of the policy, but not only that they're aware of the policy, but that they also know, again, like we said earlier, the services and things that are available to support them, support our faculty, and also to support our students so they can become more successful. So that's the information that we have. Are there any questions from anyone regarding the policy? We know that it's a first read, but.
Any questions?
Director Phelps-Okoro, I have a question.
Go ahead, Director.
So when you said we're removing the instructor-initiated withdrawal procedure, does that mean that the instructors will no longer withdraw students? So that's what you mean by procedure?
That's correct. The instructors will no longer withdraw students. They will be able to report attendance. And for students that never attend, we will be withdrawing those students and they can appeal that. But we're taking that piece and really putting the instructor in the role of working with that student. Perhaps they don't need to be withdrawn, making sure they know the other resources and things that are available so they can assist the student. But correct, the faculty will no longer be withdrawing the students.
Okay.
It will become completely a student responsibility.
Thank you. And then a follow-up to that, that'll be done the second week, so there won't be any withdrawals theoretically third and fourth week?
Okay, no, the withdrawals will occur throughout the semester because we have classes, we have 16-week classes, we have 8-week classes, we have 12-week classes. So we're looking at the second week of attendance for each one of those classes. So it will occur throughout the semester as those classes start.
Okay, so I think what I'm saying is for each, let's say one class that's however many weeks long, will there be withdrawals? From what I heard, it will be after the second week. If no one attended, then they'll be withdrawn.
Yes.
So will there be done any automatic withdrawals the third through the fifth week?
No, if they did not attend the first 2 weeks, that's when they will be taken out for non-attendance. Now, if they attended the first couple of weeks and then they stop attending, then that's going to be another issue where really we'll be working with those students to try and get them back to come back to class. And that's where we'll be looking at this like on a retention basis, like on an individual basis with those students because they did attend the first couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Do have a quick question, if I may, Dirk.
Go ahead, Director.
So what are your plans to get these changes out to the students, your communication plans?
Well, once the policy is finalized, we'll be working with our marketing area to get this information out. So it will be before the beginning of the fall semester. We anticipate hopefully having things in place and rolling it out around July or so, end of June, July, start to make those communications with our students. We know we'll also have to do it right at the beginning of the semester when students come back because they're not all going to be reading information during the summer, but we will be starting that communication around that time.
Anyone else? I do have one question. One thing, if I understand how this is going to work now, that concerns me is whether there is still an easy, readily available mechanism for a faculty member to contact your part of the organization and to say, I just had a conversation with student Susie Smith, and I'm concerned about what she's telling me about barriers that are arising. And to communicate to someone who can then take responsibility for contacting that student and making sure that the barriers are being overcome. If we tell the faculty, in essence, this isn't your job anymore, I'm concerned that we might lose that method of communication that would help us catch students before they fall too far, before they've missed a class or two. Is that something you can work into it, or will that mechanism still exist, and will we be telling the faculty that we're still hoping they will do that?
Yes, it still exists. And actually what the faculty will be able to do is refer that student to one of our retention coaches. And the retention coach is located within the pathway. And as we're building the process, one of the pieces of the process is not only to include the information so that my area can drop those students that's not attending, but also to include information on students that have sporadically attended or students that were coming and stopped attending. And that information would be going directly to our retention coaches so they can reach out to those students.
Thank you. Any other questions on this policy? Pretty good for a first read. Anything else you would like to say, Dr. Adams?
No, that's it.
Okay, so there's nothing to vote on here. This is a first read, and we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much. Having said we're going to move on, I would like to point something out here to the board, I think, that I think is important. We spent most of 3 years working on the adoption and implementation and development of a guided pathways program with the stated goals of removing barriers to completion, having better data, being more data driven, focusing on student success and completion, removing requirements that are not really essential to a degree or a certification, and on more strategic thinking and more integration of strategic plans. And we have heard a whole lot of things tonight about how various parts of MATC are doing those things. And I hope we can get out of the COVID era and start being able to see measurable results, improving completion. But I just think it's worth taking a breath and saying all that that work that was done preliminarily over the last 3 years is bearing fruit, at least at the first level, which is we are changing the way we operate and being more student success focused. So thank you, all of you who have contributed tonight and talked about those things. Next on the agenda is my report, always the highlight of the evening. Directors Case and Wilson and I, along with MATC staff, attended the Wisconsin Technical College District Boards Association virtual spring meeting that was held on Friday, April 16, 2021, with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have asked Beth Schultz to circulate to all of you a list of 10 things that were developed during that program that district boards were asked to consider doing or told they should think about doing in order to improve our DEI performance. I think you'll see that many of them are things we are already doing or have implemented recently, like making DEI a regular monthly board meeting topic to be addressed. But there are others there that I think we should take a look at and see what else we should be implementing as an institution. One of the things on that list is developing a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan for the board. We have one not of our specific choosing, but which is imposed upon us by the state. And we have a pretty diverse board. I was also acting as this board's liaison to and a member of the District Boards Association Board of Directors. And right after spending the morning on DEI issues, we had our meeting, our quarterly meeting, at which I looked and saw that there was not one person of color on the screen. I don't think there were any people who I would characterize as recognized minorities of any kind. And I told them that I would make an effort to find someone else other than somebody that looks and sounds and acts like me, which is probably all of you, but to get the point, to perform that liaison job in the future and perhaps be a member of the board. They really do need whatever help we can give them. There also continues to be expressions of thanks to me, but for all of you for the participation that we've provided in the state technical college programming over the last 3 or 4 years in particular. Members of other boards continue to thank me, and I think they've thanked others, David Dull in particular, for the participation we've shown. And I think we need to continue the commitment to participating at that level. Director Case, do you have anything to add about the DEI program from the spring meeting?
I do not. I think what Beth sent out is a good representation of things to focus on. So thank you.
Okay. Director Wilson, I don't know if you're on. If you are, do you have anything you wish to add? Okay, I'll continue then.
Director Foley?
Yes.
I also attended. I just think it's a good idea for all of us on the board to look at the replay. For those that did not attend, there are some valid points that Beth pointed out here. But there's also, if you just replay it in your mind, might get a feel for our retreat coming up.
Okay. Thank you. My apologies for not knowing you were on the list. It was a well-attended program. And the expressions by members of boards across the state about the value of that morning were high. There was a very high rating of the program. So I do encourage the rest of you to follow the link. And if you don't know where to find it, I'm sure that Beth can get it to you to watch those proceedings. On Friday, May 7th, from 11:30 to 12:30 p.m., Directors Case, Wilson, and I will hold a virtual listening session for employees to bring their thoughts, concerns, and innovative ideas to the board. We will report back to the full board on the outcomes of the session. Next week, board members will be receiving a board self-evaluation form. All of you, except I think Director Mays, have seen this before. We want to complete this survey by May 15th so we can review the results during our May Board of Directors meeting. On May 27th, MATC will hold a district board appointment meeting starting at 9 a.m. to replace the seat vacated by Director Mitchell. The seat will represent an employer with more than 15 employees. I believe the applications are due by 4:30 p.m. on Monday, the 3rd, and that the letters of reference are due by 4:30 p.m. on the 7th. So if there's anyone you wish to encourage to apply, there are a few days left to do that. The MATC District Board will hold a board retreat on June 7th from 2 to 4 p.m. focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. My apologies to Director Hamilton, who I think is not going to be able to attend. It was the only date we could get more than 4 or 5 members of the board to attend before the end of this fiscal year. Now I'd like to introduce Layla Merrifield, Executive Director of the Wisconsin Technical College District Boards Association. As most of you know, the association serves as a statewide voice in support of technical and adult education, provides a forum for board member education and development, and promotes state and federal legislative agendas in the best interest of the technical colleges and our students and employers. Layla addresses annually each technical college board and provides an update on the association's latest initiatives. Layla, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Director Foley, and thanks to the entire board for having me once again. I certainly hope that next year we'll all be in person and I can visit campus once again. And if I may, thanks so much, Mark, for the endorsement of the DEI training. I love to hear that, and thanks for sharing those takeaways. If anyone would like to view those materials, they are available at districtboards, all spelled out.org. And the presentation from Dr. Williams will be there for 2 weeks yet. So a little time yet to review those. And certainly I'm very pleased and gratified to hear that that you all found that program useful and relevant. I will just mention that the Boards Association is putting together a trustee forum, which is not really a technical term. It's just something I sort of assigned to it, but essentially an opportunity for discussion amongst trustees. So trustee to trustee, sort of peer-to-peer discussions. We're going to start by discussing issues around DEI. And I think these will be somewhat structured conversations. We'll have an article or a podcast or something to react to that folks can purely on a volunteer basis. If you'd like to participate in those discussions, I think we could certainly use Milwaukee's leadership in that sense. In talking with trustees from around the state. I'm sure you all know that some of our colleges are less blessed with the expertise available on your particular board and some of our other boards. We saw a need to develop some capacity and some sustained efforts throughout the technical college system. And we're looking to our trustees to sort of kickstart that by talking to their peers and kind of hitting on some of our pressing issues and figuring out how board members can continue to sustain these efforts and move us forward where we need to be in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So stay tuned for that. It'll be forthcoming in trustee communications. I'd also like to mention that on July 16th and 17th, we will have our first face-to-face quarterly meeting of the District Boards Association since January of 2020. That will be taking place in Stevens Point and will be hosted by Mid-State Technical College. And the topic will be board evaluations. So both evaluations of your CEO as well as board self-evaluations. And I did just hear that this board is circulating a self-evaluation, which is step number one, right? So we certainly want to encourage that sort of best practice throughout the state. I'd also like to just say thank you to, again, Director Foley, Dr. Martin, and your entire advocacy team, including Ramey and Janice. Thanks for having me and including me on those advocacy Zooms this spring and winter. I found them really enlightening. It's very helpful to hear how legislators are interacting with trustees and with the colleges. That was a really nice experience that of course is sort of a silver lining of Zooms and doing everything virtually. But the team did a fantastic job. They didn't need me there at all, but it was certainly helpful for me to be able to listen in on those conversations. I know it's a lot of time invested, but I certainly appreciate the trustees who made themselves available and participated in those sessions. Very good work, and we are doing our best to continue that work and hopefully develop some really positive dividends in the Capitol this spring. We continue to have very positive conversations, and I'm sure Ramey's going to give you, or Janice will give you an update later on tonight. But from my perspective, we continue to have an excellent reputation and excellent relationships within the Capitol. And all good things. So I'm hoping for, and I certainly think we have reason to hope for, a similar outcome to the last budget in terms of positive results for funding for technical colleges. And certainly, at least on the Assembly side, they've already signaled an interest in once again exploring student financial aid improvements for technical colleges. I think the Assembly was there 2 years ago, and I'm happy to hear that they're still there. So we certainly want to keep the focus on our students and the need for ongoing funding for those in financial need. It's certainly a primary focus for us in terms of statewide advocacy. Along with our colleges, we know that our students deserve and need that investment, even given the federal emergency funds, which are much appreciated. Which we've received over the past year, and the legislature is very interested in those federal funds. We've certainly fielded quite a few questions on how they can be used, how they have been used, and when we will have more information in the future in terms of use of those funds. So obviously it's a significant amount of cash, but that's true for many areas of the state budget. And I don't expect at this point that that's going to hurt us in any way. I think the legislature is hearing the message both from technical colleges as well as UW that there are many strings attached to those federal relief dollars. Again, much needed by our students, much needed by our colleges, and we continue to tell that story of sort of making up for revenue losses rather than any sort of sustained or sustaining operational funding within those federal dollars. And of course, again, we're continuing to work on transfer degrees for all technical colleges as separate legislation during this session. So that's my report. I'm happy to field any questions or comments, Director Foley. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to you.
Any questions, comments, points for the good of the order? I would also like to say thank you to Layla. I've been at the national legislative summits and the state legislative summits, meeting with our congressional representatives and our state legislative representatives, I think for 4, maybe 5 years now with Layla. It's always nice to get at the door of a congressman's office and open it and people say, "Hi, Layla." She has a great rapport with, it appears, all of them, which is pretty tough in this environment. And I think has opened a lot of doors for us and done a lot of good work for technical colleges generally. So Layla, thanks very much for your report tonight and for all your hard work. Next is the President's report. Dr. Martin.
Okay, well, thank you and good evening, board members, faculty, staff, administration, students, and members of our community. I'd also like to thank Layla. She's truly a wonderful asset, not only to the Boards Association, but to our President's Association. As Chair Foley mentioned, her expertise, her knowledge, her skill set is invaluable to the presidents and to our boards and to our colleges, especially as we work on our budget with our legislators. And she has deftly handled many challenging situations very well that I was even concerned about entering in, and she handled it great. So thanks again, Layla, for being here and for all the great work that you do. In alignment with our efforts to become a Hispanic serving institution, MATC held its first virtual bilingual open house, Casa Abierta, on March 25th for prospective students and their families interested in our bilingual programs and classes. More than 80 students and their families attended. MATC, as many of you know, offers several bilingual programs, such as medical interpreter, dental assistant, dietary manager certificate, nursing assistant, early childhood education, and bilingual office assistant. I know we continue to work on offering more courses and more programs, but I want to thank our recruitment team, the HSI Task Force, the Multicultural Office, Milwaukee PBS, and other faculty and staff who helped put this event together. Also on March 25th, I served as a panelist for the Achieving the Dreams National President's Symposium. I shared MATC's strategic priority and commitment on centering racial equity in its work, starting with the continued commitment of my senior leadership team to develop its own equity and race literacy to better inform decision-making, which was one of their key recommendations. We received a number of recommendations based on surveys and interviews from the Achieving the Dream team. The Greater Milwaukee Committee hosted the former Governor Tommy Thompson and local education experts on April 12th. As a panelist, I was invited to address what's happening at MATC in the ways that education can overcome inequities, close the wealth gap, and provide more social mobility to our region. The college has been working with developer Jay Jeffords to bring MATC student housing to the former Milwaukee Journal Sentinel complex. Late this summer, early fall, we will be offering board members an on-site tour of the new student housing. Another MATC connection to the site, which we all read about in the newspaper, was about Tenor High School will expand into an adjacent area. During their senior year, students from Tenor High School attend MATC to earn college credit in a post-secondary degree program, often graduating with a program certificate or technical diploma and making great progress on an associate degree. In addition to also getting their high school diploma. This is just one of many successful dual enrollment early college programs that we have. And speaking of high schools, Mayor Barrett, MPS Superintendent Dr. Posley, UWM Chancellor Dr. Money, and I joined forces on April 15th to get the word out to community organizations to call on anyone who knows a high school senior to make sure that they fill out the FAFSA. And we shared resources that will help them to complete the FAFSA, which, as many of you know, is very difficult. Completion rates for FAFSA have been declining during COVID and are at now 32% lower than last year in Milwaukee Public Schools, for example. This is a national trend. This is very alarming for us, as this is a critical piece of our enrollment efforts, especially as we look around the Promise program, which is predicated on completing that FAFSA. MATC holds sessions to help students complete the FAFSA on Tuesdays, every Tuesday. So if you know of any high school seniors, please speak with them about the importance of going to college and the importance of also making it affordable and completing the FAFSA. This month, we had the honor of welcoming Professor Ibram X. Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, to MATC. This virtual event was attended by over 600 employees, students, and external partners. After the one-hour conversation with Dr. Kendi, Milwaukee PBS Black Nouveau host, Earl Arms, had the opportunity to interview Professor Kendi and tape an episode for the show. I want to thank our DEI committee leadership of Myra George in particular and Dr. Bonaparte and Milwaukee PBS for their efforts in hosting this great event. And as part of our Moonshot for Equity initiative, the college will be working with Dr. Sean Harper and the Race and Equity Center at the University of Southern California, considered to be the gold standard for this training in our country. Beginning next month, the center will lead education and training with a series of 12 monthly convenings, so it'll be over the course of a year, once a month. These 12 professional development sessions will focus on strategies and practical approaches to address various aspects of racial equity. So here's the sample of some of the titles. Addressing employee encounters with workplace racism, recovering from racial inequities produced and exacerbated by COVID-19, cultivating and sustaining inclusive classrooms for students of color, recruiting and diversifying staffs at all levels. And then beginning in the fall semester, USC Race and Equity Center under Dr. Harper will conduct a racial climate assessment at our college. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Martin? One of the things that you heard there is that we're going to be having an external assessment on some of the DEI factors, which is one of the things on the list of 10 items for boards to consider doing. And I think that means we are actually doing at least 8 and maybe all of the 10 things that were recommended on that list. It's something I'd ask the board members to think hard about, whether we're doing the right things, enough things, all of those things, whether there are other things we should be doing to make sure that we actually accomplish something and don't just have yet another program. So let's think about that for the next board meeting, please. One last time, any questions for Dr. Martin? Great, thank you, Dr. Martin. Next is the District Student Senate report. Is Brandy Martin on with us?
Hi, I am.
Go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Foley. Dr. Vicki Martin, members of the MATC District Board and Administration, I am happy to be here to represent the district student government and the student body. My name is Brandy Martin, and I am the Vice President of West Allis Student Government and the Board Representative for District Student Government. Since the last board meeting, the District Student Government Association is in the process of voting revisions to the Student Code of Conduct and the 2021-2022 use of student activity fees in student life. While DSGA is still reviewing and voting, I am excited to see the commitment to improving the student experience through student conduct concerns. Student Life hosted a Spirit Week, April 12th through April 16th, and I was excited to see the celebration of the MATC student community through the week. The character virtual event and the Pet Appreciation Day, where we were able to share pictures of our pet virtually, were 2 of my favorite events that week. I appreciate the time and dedication that it took from Student Life. As the end of the year is approaching, I also want to call attention to the efforts around mental health support for students. A couple examples is the Mindfulness Monday series hosted by Student Life and the upcoming virtual mental health first aid hosted by Veterans Resource Center on May 4th and June 7th. I think it is important to have these events for students, especially during this highly stressful time. Lastly, I would like to express my appreciation for this experience throughout the year. I have thoroughly enjoyed being a part of these meetings and this awesome opportunity. You all as a board have made me feel very welcome at each meeting, and I will never forget this experience. For that, I would like to thank you all. Have a good night.
Randy, thank you very much. We've enjoyed having you as well and appreciate all the good information you've been passing along to us.
Thank you.
Next is Milwaukee PBS General Manager's Report. Mr. Zachary.
Good afternoon, Chair Foley. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. Board directors, Dr. Martin, faculty, staff, and administration. Before I begin, I just want to show you, this is the new hallway in C building, and the whole place looks fantastic. I can't wait for all of you to be back on campus to take a tour and see the amazing work that's been done on behalf of the students. So anyhow, I wanted to show you that. So here's some updates on Milwaukee PBS activities. On the revenue side, as of April 13th, we've officially reached and surpassed the $5.2 million goal. We're seeing more bequests, and that is helping offset the shortfalls in the funding areas that have been most affected by the pandemic. We're also hopeful that between now and the end of June, we will be able to reach our original pre-COVID goal of $6.3 million. 10 days ago, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting notified Milwaukee PBS that WMVS and WMVT, Milwaukee PBS, would receive, and we have, a $599,563 grant from the American Act Stabilization bill that was passed. Here's some programming news. May, as you heard, is National Mental Health Awareness Month. Black Nouveau host Earl Arms will talk with psychologist Dr. Kwaku Ramel-Smith about ways to practice good mental health. And after the May 13th broadcast of Black Nouveau, Dr. Smith and Earl Arms will continue online with a live conversation with the community. Our 1036 series, hosted by Portia Young, will follow up on the 4 young people featured in our award-winning documentary, Kids in Crisis, You're Not Alone. We'll find out how they are all coping with the pandemic and how their mental health advocacy is going. We'll also check in with a new mental health awareness group at Riverside High School in Milwaukee. And lastly, we'll hear from a Latina mother on how she is coping with the pandemic and other stress issues often found within the Hispanic community. Next week, Senator Tammy Baldwin will come to the Milwaukee PBS studio to tape an interview for inclusion in a documentary about the Wisconsin dairy industry. This documentary is a partnership of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and Milwaukee PBS, and our hour-long film will air this fall. That concludes my report for this month, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Congratulations on your fundraising success and also on the grant. Are there any questions from Mr. Zachary? Thank you, Bodan.
Thank you.
Next is the Legislative Matters Report. Janice Falkenberg, will you be doing this, or are we going directly to Ramey?
We're going to go directly to Ramey Zelenkova, who provided you a written report tonight. So Ramey?
Ramey, go ahead.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Chair Foley, members of the board. I'll start by just picking up from where Layla spoke a little bit earlier in specific to the state budget. Definitely agree with Layla. You know, great work by the District Boards Association, all of the colleges. There's a lot of support in the legislature for our initiatives. And so lots of just positive feedback there specific to technical colleges. We are in the middle of the budget. I've kept on the report throughout the past few months a number of items specific to technical college, as well as items MATC cares about. The last public hearing for the state budget will end this week, and the Joint Finance Committee will then begin their more public deliberations as they mark up the governor's biennial budget recommendation. They're currently identifying areas that they want to prioritize, and as well as identifying the dollars that they're willing to invest in some of those key areas. As Layla mentioned earlier, certainly there's a lot of attention on the federal resources that have been coming into the state, both at the discretion of the governor, but also at the local government level, K-12 education, higher education, et cetera. And so that's definitely going to be a factor for the legislature to consider as they determine the spending levels for each programs. That said, they do recognize and appreciate that it's one-time money, so there's going to be a balance there. I expect soon that the federal government will release their guidance on the American Rescue Plan in terms of some of the ways that the state can spend the money, local governments can spend the money that they've received, and also higher education and K-12 education. So that will also impact potentially the direction the legislature wants to move. So that I just wanted to provide a general update on the budget process. Usually, if we have a look at historical trends, the technical college system kind of comes in the middle of the budget process. The legislature always attempts to get a budget signed or passed and then signed shortly thereafter by June 30th, which is the end of this current biennial budget. And I think that's the goal that they're looking at trying to achieve again this time around. And typically technical colleges come up really in the middle of that process. So, late May is typically when we are before the committee. So working on advocacy there, certainly in support of, again, increase in state general aid and also increased funding for the need-based financial aid in the Wisconsin grant program. And then just shifting really quickly, we are monitoring and engaging in a couple of legislative proposals, standalone proposals that are outside of the budget process. I have those listed on the report for you today, proposals that relate to the costs associated with publication of proceedings of meetings held by local governments, which would apply to us. Legislation has passed the Senate to allow for less publication in newspapers, for example, as one option, not a mandate. Assembly action is pending there. There have also been a number of proposals specific to how federal funds should be spent, but thus far the governor has vetoed those proposals specific to the federal dollars that he has authority to distribute. And then I'll end with just two very brief updates at the federal level. President Biden's funding request for fiscal year 2022, just some top line numbers were released. We'll know more in the coming months, but lots of investment there, a 40% increase in Department of Education programs. And then also I just wanted to flag a sort of a new issue. The FCC is in the process of implementing the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, which would provide for some relief to certain individuals, for example, those who qualify, who have households with recipients of Pell Grants could get discounts on broadband services. So wanted to flag that as well. Again, the FCC is in the process of implementing that program, and I included a hyperlink on the board report for those who are interested and want to learn more. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ramey. Any questions? Thank you for covering the entire federal and state budgets in 3 minutes. Big task. Thank you. Next is the enrollment report. Dr. Adams, I think we're back to you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening again, everyone, board, administration, staff, and students.
Dr. Adams, can you increase the volume a little bit, please, if you can?
Is this better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, great. So I just say good evening again to everyone. I believe I do have a PowerPoint that they will be putting up. Okay, great. When we look at enrollment, we wanted to really be in alignment with guided pathways as we report enrollment to you. So we wanted to say that when we look at the enrollment again, we want to be in line with guided pathways. And we want to say that our enrollment, the direction that we're looking at for the college, and we have the support of the EVP office as a champion and under the direction of Dr. Gonzalez de Jesus, we wanted to begin to expand the view of enrollment that you're seeing. We wanted to take into consideration that enrollment really is a college-wide effort, as we have so many departments and individuals working on it. And with that in mind, we wanted to begin the report with some other critical areas that will be invited to briefly share some enrollment strategies, both new and continuing. We first want to build, next slide. We first want to begin with, of course, the numbers. We want to look at, first we'll look at our spring numbers. And we know that our spring goal, yes, our spring goal for 2021 fiscal year was 9,100. Currently, we are at 90.1% of that goal. In other words, we're 898 FTEs from meeting that goal. And that's current as of this week. So the next slide, please. We began registration for the fiscal year of 2022 on April 12th. And the fiscal year goal for 2022 is 8,800 for FTEs. And our summer goal is 772 FTEs. And currently, with registration having begun on April 12th, we are 33.4% at that goal. And fall, we are 13.9%. So we are quite a bit of ways from our goal, of course, with registration just beginning. So what I wanted to do was, of course, share the numbers, because the numbers are very important to see where we're at. But I also want the board to know the things that we're doing to work on enrollment. And the next slide, we're talking about, I wanted to bring several areas together that are working very heavily on enrollment. And one of the first areas is our marketing and our recruitment area. When we look at obtaining enrollment, we look to marketing, we look at the marketing aspect, the recruitment aspect, we look at the onboarding aspect, we look at learning and retention. And this evening, we're going to take the opportunity for Tona Taglavia and our Director of Marketing, and for Marwell Santiago, to our Manager of Recruitment, to share a brief overview of some of the marketing and the recruitment strategies that we're currently employing, that we're currently using to increase enrollment. Tony, Marwell?
Thanks, Dr. Adams, and Marwell, good to have you with us as well. So I just wanted to touch briefly on some new strategies on the marketing side. So in the wake of COVID, and so this is something that's been worked on and been in the market, but it is comparatively new. Knowing the spike in unemployment and the increase in high school seniors who are second guessing or reconsidering plans, or even current college students who are reconsidering, we developed two specific campaigns to reach those audiences. One to reach displaced workers, and the other to reach the transient student audience. So a lot of those students are students enrolled in four-year institutions, and where we would normally only market to them for summer and winter classes, we're really marketing in a year-round way to that audience, knowing that while a lot of four-year schools have retained retention or retained enrollment, that there are still students who are feeling like they're not getting the full experience that they signed up for, and might have an interest in picking up some classes from MATC with smaller class sizes, a lower cost, and expert instructors. So those campaigns are out there kind of at the top of the funnel to bring in as many new applicants as possible. We're also continuing to expand the channels where we're at to reach students. TikTok is one of them that's new this year, and we'll be launching advertising through that channel in the coming weeks. So that will be coming forth. And to touch on the next few items, I want to turn it over to my colleague Marwell Santiago, the Manager of Recruitment on our team.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, Dr. Adams. Good evening, Chair Foley and members of the board. Just a few quick points about some of the activities that recruitment is covering as we work through this pandemic. As you remember, the class of 2020 definitely experienced quite trauma as they wrapped up their year last year, and we opened up the application or reopened the application for them to have another chance at Promise this year. You may remember that we actually resolicited the class of 2020 for this spring. And earlier this spring, we reopened the application for any graduate from the class of 2020 to go ahead and apply. If they did not attend any other college, we are welcoming them this opportunity to apply for Promise again. We also extended the deadline to June 30th. We wanted to make sure that they had every opportunity to learn about Promise and to apply for it as well. And we're seeing quite a lot of activity in that area. Another exciting turn of events as we approach the other side of the pandemic is that we're now offering in-person tours. We have resumed those. We used to get a lot of activities on campus with in-person tours, but through work with Student Life, the admissions office, and with the Health and Safety Committee, we were able to develop a process to bring back individual tours. Actually, families are welcome to come in small groups as long as it's 4 people. Another very exciting activity that we're pursuing is expanding our virtual tour presence. I actually just went through all 4 campuses last week with a photographer, and we caught a lot of great new footage of our labs and our hallways and our new offices. And we hope to have that new virtual tour up and ready by mid to late June. As Dr. Martin mentioned earlier, our Casa Abierta happened on March 25th. We were very excited to welcome 83 students and their families to attend, and all of our bilingual programs were represented, and it was quite an exciting 2 hours of programming. Actually, this week, on Thursday, April 29th, we will be hosting our traditional open house. So we're excited to open up our Zoom room for that, and we hope to get a lot of traction in terms of applications and interest in the college that evening as well. Something that we've been working on over the last couple of years is actually an increased presence in our CBOs, especially the CBOs where we have HHCD and GED programs. We're working with general education. I have a recruiter assigned to work with them directly so that the transition from the GED, HSCD programs to our post-secondary programs is as seamless as possible. And we're also working with our financial aid department to make sure that those issues and questions are addressed as well. With that, I will hand it back over to Tony.
Thanks, Marwell. And just a few other brief notes. We have a multi-page detailed year-round enrollment plan, but just to hit on a few 3 strategies that are continuing that I thought were worth mentioning. One is that Marwell's team continues to respond to any lead that we get within 1 day. And those leads come from our advertising. They also come from the homepage on the website, and every single program page now has the opportunity where someone can reach out and request info or apply directly from the page. From the top of the funnel end, we're pushing applications year round. It literally happens every week of the year, except for the weeks of Thanksgiving and Christmas, because the advertising is very expensive with retailers out there. But literally 50 weeks out of the year, we're doing a push for applicants. And the last thing I'd note is that we continue to use lists of our current students to encourage them to register with paid advertising. So whereas most of what you traditionally think of as marketing and recruitment is top of funnel, middle of funnel, we are involved closer to the bottom as well, especially as our current students come through the process to encourage them to register for classes in the next term. And we also do some strategies toward the bottom of the funnel as well when we have new applicants to encourage them to take that last step and register for classes. So just a very brief overview. I appreciate the opportunity, Dr. Adams, and Marwell, thanks for sharing all your great work as well.
Thank you, Tony and Marwell. A few more strategies that we're working on with the admissions and within the admissions and the registration area. We have specific targeted communication plans. Just recently, we've gone through all of our communications. We're looking at all of that information that we're sending to students, and we're targeting them based on where they're at, the information that they need to have and to receive from us. one thing that I'm really excited about that we've done is in the last year and a half, we've had a deregistration committee that came together that was composed of various members of the MATC community. We had there were academic individuals involved, there were student services, there was finance individuals involved, and we looked at how we were doing dereg. And what we changed, actually we changed how we did dereg. In the past, we deregistered students kind of throughout the year, definitely when classes began. Coming up with this next fiscal year, FA fiscal year 2022, we are looking at having 2 deregistration dates for each semester, but we are having them before the semester starts. What that does is, number one, it keeps us from deregistering students after they have started classes, which is definitely a success thing, looking at the students, because some of those students do want to complete. And we're also looking at ways we can help students find various methods to hopefully make that first payment so they don't have to be deregistered, giving them more time to be able to make the other payments, giving students that perhaps registered late for financial aid to have that ability for financial aid to come in to pay for those classes. So we will not be taking students out of classes, but we will be continuing to work with students. Our first deregistration date is not scheduled until sometime in June. We have already started having communication with the students that have registered to let them know, okay, how will you be able to pay? What information do we need to provide you? How can we help you? So we're starting that communication now, and we're starting it early. We have additional outreach, and this is what Tony was also referring to before the deregistration date. But we also have a student call team that we're putting together. And the student call team will be students that we have here at MATC. They will be reaching out to possibly new students, perhaps continuing students, where we've reached out as staff that works here, maybe our navigators or maybe our recruitment specialists, but now the students will give them a call. So it's like a peer-to-peer, and that can be a call, that can be a text, that can be just a way to communicate with students. We're giving them another option, so we'll be able to work with them. Our admissions navigators are getting ready to implement something we call co-video. And what co-video is, it provides them, and we kind of stole Recruitment's idea with co-video, but what co-video does is it gives the navigator the opportunity to send a video to the student to welcome them to campus, to tell them congratulations, you've been admitted to the college, and that student with that video can right back respond to us in video also. So they can do video back and forth. And then again, this is the piece that Tony was also referring to. We have the continuing student outreach, where we work with marketing and we make sure we get those students that are currently here. We continue to give information to them about registering, during the pre-registration period, during this period of time before other students come in. So continuing to have that communication with students. So these are just a few of some of the strategies and things that we're doing. And we're starting with the marketing and the recruitment piece, and then some admissions and registration, because this is kind of on the front end. Then we also want to move to, perhaps in our next meeting, is share some retention information with you also. So that's kind of how we're going with the reporting, and we thought this would give you a really good view of the enrollment. So are there any questions or comments or anything?
Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Dr. Adams. Appreciate the information. Looking forward to the new revised presentation data going forward. Next is the pathway presentation for healthcare. Dr. Dakwar.
Thank you again, Director and Chair Foley here. The healthcare pathway celebrated its 100-year anniversary this month. So I want to say congratulations to the team. We did provide a PowerPoint presentation with narration to the board, and it included a lot of details. But I'd like to take a couple of minutes to go over some highlights. First off, MATC offers the largest number of programs in health and wellness in the region. And during this pandemic, the healthcare pathway not only survived, but also thrived. Let me tell you why. We responded to the community with very generous donations. We are seeing 23% increase in the applications amid the pandemic since last year. This is mainly in the practical nursing and nursing assistant programs, but we're also seeing this in some other programs as well. We've also focused on the student experience. We increased the articulation agreements with four-year institutions by 10%. We re-engineered the nursing assistant program, established a collaboration agreement with Black Hawk Technical College, increased clinical sites with partners in the Ozaukee County and Milwaukee County. I think we have 25 sites this year. Also, I'm happy to let you know that we have students who serve on our programs are highly diverse. And despite the pandemic, we are serving over 3,000 students this spring. Let me break down the percentage of our students so you have some idea about the students that we serve and the community that we serve here. So African American comes in the first place, and we serve slightly over 1/3. That's 1/3 of our students in the healthcare pathway, followed by white Caucasian, almost 1/3, Hispanics, 18.5%, Asian, 6.8%, Pacific Islander, 0.1%, and we have other races and ethnicities as well, which add up to 7%. With that diversity, the team has expanded our bilingual program offerings. We also improved the program admission and the petitioning process, and we also increased in our engagement of our faculty and staff in the DEI initiatives. So these are some highlights. I encourage you to listen to the narration. It's really great, and if you haven't seen it already, and the PowerPoint. And at this time, I'd like to take any questions. I have Dean Dr. Kelly Dries and their team with us tonight, and we'll be glad to address any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the board? Okay, I've got a couple. The 25 new clinical sites, first of all, congratulations. That's a big increase. But second, how much of our expanded enrollment, our expanded clinical opportunities, how much of that is in Washington County?
Sure. Thank you, Director Foley, for the question. Again, my name is Dr. Kelly Dries, and I do have my team here who will be able to answer that question. We have expanded. This is 25 new sites. We have many, many more beyond that. And in this COVID pandemic, we're really proud of being able to expand that. We have expanded into both Milwaukee and Ozaukee counties. I'll turn it over to Mary Peters-Winowiak, our Director of Clinical Education and Compliance, who can provide additional detail. Mary?
Thanks, Dr. Dries. And hello to the district board and everyone else who's here. Those 25 sites that we have increased, we do not have a presence in addition in Washington County at this time. That doesn't mean we're not pursuing them. We definitely have feelers out. We've got a great team. My partner in crime, Sandy McElnay, and our admin assistant, Nancy Bowers, are both working, I want to say daily, on reaching out to clinical partners, including in the Washington County area. So, the effort is definitely there and underway. We're just yet to see it come to fruition.
And I think the big piece here is that we have to be very mindful of our district lines. If in fact we go outside the district, whether it's north, south, east, or not east, we would be in the lake. How about north and west and south? We need to be very mindful of what those clinical partnerships look like and which district we're actually going into. And if that particular district does not have the program in which we're seeking the clinical site, we still have a process within the WTCS system to request out-of-district sites with our sister technical colleges. So there's a process for that.
I raised a question. It's not really specific to your pathway, but I have a client that is in our district, but in Washington County in the Germantown School District. And I asked him a few months ago about his or their employment and training needs, and did he know what technical college district the company was in? And the answer was no. I just assumed it was somebody other than us.
Sure.
So I think there may be the need to communicate more to employers, maybe clinical sites. I don't know the boundaries that well in Washington, but there may be a need to re-educate some of the employers and other cooperating entities up in that part of the world that they are part of our district and we really do want to serve them and pay attention to them. Maybe you're doing that already, Dr. Dreiss, but others as well, I don't know, but I think there may be some gap in the communication there.
Sure. Very good. Thank you.
My last question is 23% is, can you do that again next year?
It'll be higher.
Good, because some of you know that at the board reappointment hearing, I said that I thought that our goal ought to be to increase enrollment by 50% in the next 3 years. So I've set the goal. Go ahead, go figure it out. But how does that compare? Do we know to our competitive programs? Who are our competitors for these particular kinds of classes? And are we doing better than they are in this, or are we doing about the same or not as well? What do you think?
Sure, absolutely. You're right. We have seen an increase in our applications by 23%. It was actually reported on Fox 6 News on March 9th by Derica Williams, who did a story at the Mequon campus. And several of those programs that have increased, particularly practical nursing, nursing assistant, etc. And to your question, how do we compare to our competitors? Tony Taglavia has some information regarding that. I can tell you the application type information is not public facing, but others is. So Tony?
Thanks, Dr. Dries. So in terms of looking at other colleges, when we have conversations among colleagues about what enrollment looks like across institutions, it's typically across pathways or across schools. And so we don't really have good apples to apples comparative data for healthcare applications to use our figure and see where other institutions are at.
Mm-hmm.
Director Foley, if I may, internally at least, if we compare to the rest of the college, this program is doing extremely well. Just to give you some idea, like this spring, we're up by 13% applications. Last fall, about 12% applications. So when we see 23%, that's far beyond where we are collectively as a college. But I get your question. It's more about the competition and the external as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the question is, are we doing something really right, or is there a tailwind that's pushing everyone forward at about the same speed? And I assume we're doing a bunch of things really right, but it would be nice to tease that out if we could, so we get more of what we want. So if there's a way to get that information without breaking somebody's bank account or their once in a lifetime vacation, it'd be good to have that information. I understand it may not exist. Any other questions about this topic? All right, thank you all. Reese, Tony, etc.
Thank you.
Next, Eva Keither with the fiscal year 21 year-end projection of the general fund.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. Once again, board members, Chair Foley, and everyone else. I'm real happy. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I thought maybe I'd introduce myself as my name is Eva Keither and I'm the controller here at MATC. And I work directly with Jeff Hollow. So I'm happy to be able to present on Jeff Hollow's behalf a forecast of our current fiscal year 21 budget, as well as our preliminary upcoming fiscal 22 budget, or 22 budget, yes. So I'm going to begin by pointing out the pivotal factors which have impacted our current 21 budget, and then I will share with you the key assumptions which have been built into our upcoming fiscal 22 budget. So we'll start with our forecast of our current budget, and at the moment we'll be focusing on column D, which is in blue, which is our current year forecast. And we're going to be comparing our forecast to our budget, our original budget for fiscal 21, which is in yellow. And then there is a column to the right of that, column F, which is the percent that the forecast is to budget. So that's a little bit of a variance statistic there. So one thing I'd like to point out in the very beginning is our FTEs, our FTEs, which is in column or row 8. So as you may recall, for our current year budget, our current 21 budget, we brought our FTEs down by 9%. So pre-pandemic, we were at about 10,000 FTEs. So FY21's budget was, we set our target at 9,100 FTEs. And you can see in our forecast column that at this point in time, we are predicting that we're going to finish the year at about 8,200 FTEs. And as everybody knows, the FTEs are the key driver of all of our budget. So FTEs affects our tuition revenue, affects our state aid, and so it's a key, again, driver of our budget. So we're going to start at the top. We'll start at the top with our major categories of revenue, and we'll just kind of move our way down. Again, focusing on our full year forecast for 21. So the first category of first primary category of revenue is our local government revenue, which is our operating tax levy. As you can see, we estimate that we'll come in very close to budget. When the tax levy is set in October, we know exactly what we're going to levy. So there's almost never going to be a variance here because we amend the budget once we know what the tax levy is. The next category of revenue is state aid. And you will also see a very nominal variance here as well. When we budgeted state aid for this year at the onset of the pandemic, we were told by the state that cuts were to be expected. So we factored in a 5% overall cut in our state aid budget. And ultimately the state made their cut to the entire pot of aid, which is shared by all of the 16 technical colleges. So the cut to MATC's aid was less than what we budgeted it to be. So even though we're not expecting to achieve our FTE budget, which impacts our aid, our very conservative state aid budget is very close to our forecast. So the next category of revenue is tuition, which is our statutory program fees, followed by material fees. As everyone knows, we finalized our current FY21 budget at the onset of the pandemic. So we had all kinds of uncertainty going into the 21 budget. And so as I pointed out before, we brought our FTEs down by 9%. To 9,100 FTEs. And unfortunately, as conservative as we thought this FTE projection was, we did fall short of our 9,100 FTE prediction by about 1,000 FTEs. And you can see that this has unfavorably affected our tuition and program fees and material fees budgets. And really the primary loss in revenue experienced in fiscal 21 directly relates to this decline in enrollments. So moving on to our other student fees category, we're slightly over budget with other student fees, and that's row 17. So we're slightly over budget with other student fees. This is due to a nearly doubling of our online fees as the transition to virtual learning has caused a spike in our per credit online fee. And so that fee went up for 21, but we know, as I mentioned earlier, that these fees have been suspended by the state for FY22. However, this year it has provided added unexpected revenue to our budget, which has helped to offset reductions in some of the other student fees. So again, coming in slightly over budget in this category. For institutional revenue is our next category. And this category has decreased due to decreases in, we have small pluses or small decreases across the board, but seeing decreases in parking revenue since everybody's working from home. And we did experience a sharp decrease in our interest income due to the market conditions, which have been absolutely unpredictable. So again, the story on the revenue side for this current fiscal year is that we expect to close the year down slightly over $3 million in revenue. So now we can move on to the major categories of expense for FY21. And the first one being salaries expense. So we are predicting that our salaries expense will exceed budget by about 2.4% or about 2.6 million. This variance to budget relates to a number of things. The first being during FY21, we did hire some critical student-facing positions, including advisors, as we continued throughout the year to work to fully implement guided pathways. We also had a little bit of incremental unbudgeted pay for online training, which was due to COVID. That was a bit unexpected incremental piece of our budget, not a nominal piece, I'll say. And then we have a provision. We have a provision within the salaries line to cover the cost of our voluntary separation incentive program, our VSIP program. And then we also have an allotment for a lump sum distribution for all full-time and part-time staff and faculty, which Jeff Hollow has discussed with the board in a previous meeting. Moving on to fringe benefits, and I'll take questions after I get through the full projection for 21, and then of course we'll move on to 22. So our fringe benefits budget is also underspent, and the primary reason for that has to do with the reduction in our health claims, which is due to the pandemic. Many people are putting off some of the elective procedures, and that really has impacted the volume of our health claims for 21. So that's, again, always a wild card for us in the budget office. We also, and moving on now to the discretionary, our discretionary expense, which is our non-salary, non-benefit expenses. We do also expect to end the year well under budget on discretionary spending. We've obviously had much less activity on campus, and we're seeing savings on travel, utilities, other consumables, class lab supplies, equipment repairs and maintenance, etc. So with the savings that we've experienced from our reductions in our health claims and the reduced spending, discretionary spending, both due to the pandemic, we were able to factor in a lump sum distribution, and we remain well positioned to achieve our objective of balancing our current year budget. So I think I'll stop there, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this point.
Any questions, anyone? There being no one, go ahead and talk about projections.
Okay, will do. So now we'll switch gears and talk about our preliminary upcoming budget. And you can see at the very top that we've set an FTE target at 8,800. So that represents a 7.3% increase over where we feel that will end this year at 8,200. And of course, that number, we don't have a crystal ball, but that is what, we consider to be a conservative estimate. So again, we'll start at the top with our major categories of revenue and just kind of work our way down. So first category, local government tax levy, is expected to increase by about 1.6 million due to anticipated increase in our district property value due to net new construction. This assumed increase is simply based on trending new construction value increases over the past 3 to 5 years. Second category is state aid. We are assuming a slight increase in state aid this coming year. As we all know, state aid is divvied up across the 16 Wisconsin technical colleges based on relative FTEs and relative net equalized district property values and anticipated aidable expenses. So while we expect enrollments to increase from 8,200 to 8,800, the increase in state aid is expected to be somewhat moderate because we know that the majority of the other 16 technical colleges also expect to increase their FTEs in FY22. So all of our relative portions of state aid won't change dramatically. So just a very slight increase in state aid expected. The next two categories, tuition, statutory program fees, and materials fees are expected to increase by about 10% in 22. This increase is the result of, the expected rebound in enrollments, the increase that we expect to see in our FTEs, plus we've factored in the 1.5% increase in tuition rates, which is set and approved, as you know, by the state, and we presented those fees a bit earlier. For other student fees revenue is expected to decline sharply in 22 due to the state suspension of the online fee. This revenue has historically brought approximately $700,000 in revenue. And the college has also waived the student application fee for 22, which also reduces this line, but not by that much. So moving on to the institutional revenue, I feel like I'm just zipping through this very quickly. I apologize if I'm going too quick, but we can again have questions in the end. So institutional revenue, so you can see we have a significant increase budgeted on this line of 182% over prior year. And this is primarily mostly attributable to the HERF, or Higher Education Relief Funding, that we've put a placeholder in our budget for. So the second phase of the HERF funding does allow for the reimbursement of revenue that was reduced or eliminated as a result of COVID. So we have a $4 million provisional amount in our budget, knowing that we do have this funding. And, we really look at it as, we'll be monitoring FTEs and we'll be monitoring our revenues. And as the year plays out, if the funding is not needed to balance this budget, we need to be nimble, and we'll certainly work to reprioritize it to cover some of the other priority items that have been identified to help us with our needs related to COVID. So if you look at the total revenue, it looks like that we're estimating will be is budgeted to increase by about 4.8% for 22. And now we can talk a little bit about the major categories of expense. So salaries expense, we are predicting that our salaries expense will increase by about $2.1 million in fiscal 22. We've factored in a proposed college-wide 2.25% base wage increase. 1% of this increase is intended to advance employees along their pay range within their specific pay grades. The other 1.25% of the increase is a CPI-related adjustment to base wages. So fringe benefits, again, are also, usually when wages go up, our fringe benefits go up as well, are expected to increase by approximately 1.8 million in fiscal 22. And the other reason for the expected increase in fringe benefits has to do with the expectation of greater health costs as the vaccine rolls out and individuals are able to schedule their elective procedures once again that have been put off. And we really, we looked very hard at you know, the determination of our health benefits budget. This is a wild card anyways, but with COVID, it's even more so. But we, in determining our budget, we worked very closely with our health benefits administrator, and they did put together a very comprehensive forecast that had various different scenarios related to, you know, the expected COVID impact. And then in the business office, we picked kind of the middle of the road forecast scenario that they presented. And we also used in the business office, our cost trend analysis to kind of balance out the budget. So expecting an increase of about 4.6% in fringe benefits for 22. Okay, moving on to the discretionary spend or the discretionary budget for 22. Our non-salary, non-benefit spending is expected to increase in FY22 over FY21 spending, but expected to be nearly flat compared to last year's budget. So we're 18.8 million is the expected budget, or the budget for 22, and that compares to our 21 budget, which is 18.7 million. We realize that there is a $4 million variance between what we're setting for 22 versus our current year budget. But we do expect in some of the savings that we've seen this fiscal year on the discretionary spending are expected to go away in 22 as we return to campus, and we anticipate some recovery in enrollments and FTEs. So we really do expect to see some of the consumables expenses to go back up. We have light and power, which saved us about 700,000 in 21. We expect, you know, some of those expenses to return. Class and lab supplies, repairs, maintenance, and other expenses are factored into this discretionary budget for 22. And you can see all the zeros. We feel that we're well positioned to balance our budget for the current year, and we're presenting a balanced budget as we always do for FY22. Are there any questions? I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone? Eva, thank you very much. Appreciate all the detailed information. Our last agenda item is our DEI presentation by Eva Martinez-Powis. Eva, you have the floor.
No, Chair Foley.
Did I skip something?
Yes, you did. Item number E.
The diversity, equity, and inclusion update.
We have a board monitoring for the capital remodeling.
Oh, my apologies. All right, let's do that first.
All right, so I will take this one and try to answer any questions. We, again, this is Janice Falkenberg. I oversee the facilities area, and every year we bring to the board as a preliminary matter the projects that we have prioritized and are putting forward for this next fiscal year on our capital remodeling and renovation budget. Every year we do allocate $18 million in capital renovation and construction throughout the district. And we do have a very robust prioritization process that we do go through. And we take a look at various criteria to use to do that prioritization process, and we rank the projects as they come in. The other thing that we're considering this year, as you may know, we are in the midst of completing a long-term facilities master plan as well as our academic master plan this year. So we wanted to ensure that we weren't choosing projects that could be impacted by either of those plans. So what we have presented to you are our preliminary projects for this next fiscal year, which amount to $18 million, and you will see them broken down by various types. And then we also have included our draft 3-year plan, which we are required to submit to the state every year. And I do have our Director of Facilities, Planning and Construction, Ginny Rothia, on the line, as well as James Weishon, who's our Senior Director, if there are any questions on the plan.
Questions, anyone? Well, that was relatively painless. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
Anything else now? I appear to be looking at the wrong document at the moment. So the next thing on my list is the DEI presentation. Have I missed anything?
No, that's
all
correct.
right. Eva, please go ahead. Ava, go ahead.
Can you go back to the first slide, please, Beth? Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to give the DEI update today, and I am delighted to be here with you. Good evening to everyone. It's been a little bit over a month since I started working at MATC, and I am very excited to be part of the MATC family. Today, I'd like to share with you some of the updates related to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, highlighting some of the plan, short-term plan moving forward, and a little bit about the roadmap, which we believe will lead us into a long-term strategic planning for our college as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. At the center of our process is the notion of inclusive and shared equity leadership, which centers collaboration, transparency, communication, and accountability. Our DEI plan is in alignment with Transformation 2025, specifically within the equity strategic priority. Next slide, please. The previous one, please. Thank you so much. Our DEI plan is informed by stories, voices, feedback, and data. In the last month or so, I have held over 100 meetings with students, employees, and community members. Our plan is informed and guided by some of the employee listening sessions that have been hosted, or meetings, and also some of the DEI programming that has been put together by the DEI committee. Our DEI committee co-chairs have been helpful in providing meaningful, qualitative, and quantitative data to inform our decision-making process. We have received feedback from employees, and we are also using data-driven strategies, such as achieving the dream equity recommendations, to develop our short-term goals and planning. Next slide, please. Our DEI plan addresses how we will move forward in the next 3 to 12 months. For example, during the summer 2021, we anticipate establishing our very first employee affinity groups. Coming up fall 2021, we anticipate beginning our work to implement mandatory implicit and explicit bias workshops for all of our employees. During fall 2021, we will be conducting a climate study focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as Dr. Martin shared earlier. Through the Moonshot for Equity and in partnership with Dr. Harper, we will be able to look specifically at diversity, equity, and inclusion, and particularly the racial climate at MATC. The climate study is scheduled to take place sometime between October and December in the fall semester. Again, the study will help us better understand the needs of our students and our employees. Lastly, we have created the President's Task Force on Race, Equity, and Inclusion, which will help us truly and authentically create a sustainable equity plan that addresses all of our objectives. Next slide, please. The President's Task Force on Race, Equity, and Inclusion will conduct an audit of all of our current DEI activities, assess the needs of MATC, and create a sustainable equity plan to guide all DEI efforts, long-term and short-term. The task force will focus on the MATC community, from students to employees, and our overall climate and culture. At the end of 2021-2022 calendar year, we envision a newly created DEI steering committee to support that equity plan. As I wrap up my second month at MATC, we know that we have work to do, and I am looking forward to our future collaboration and partnership with all of you in moving diversity, equity, and inclusion forward at MATC. Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving me this space to share some of my updates. Any questions?
Any questions? Not tonight, Ava. Thank you. We promise to ask you hard questions next month.
Okay, thanks.
Let's see. All right, is there any new business? Hearing none, reminders of some future events. May 15th is the MATC Spring Commencement, which will be on Milwaukee PBS at 4 p.m. May 25th, the MATC District Board meeting for May will occur also at 4 p.m. May 27th is the board appointment hearing for any applicants to fill the last 2 years of what had been David Mitchell's seat. Any other comments for the good of the order? Thank you all. We covered a lot tonight. We're 8 minutes over our schedule, so not too bad. Is there a motion to adjourn? You all want to hang around for another hour?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.